The great Senate chamber of the Valorian Empire had never known silence like this. 10,000 years of conquests, treaties, and declarations had echoed through its marble halls. Emperors had risen and fallen. Wars had begun and ended with words spoken from the central podium. But no words had ever stopped the breath of every senator, every advisor, every guard, quite like the ones that came from the dying alien on the floor. Emperor Malthus IX leaned forward on his throne. His golden robes rustled against the ancient stone as he studied the creature bleeding on the polished floor below. The alien was Kethari, a species known for their pride and their powerful warships. This one looked like he had crawled through a star's corona to reach this chamber. His scales were blackened and cracked. His 4 eyes were dim with approaching death. Green blood pooled beneath him, spreading across the white marble like a dark promise. "Say that again," the Emperor commanded. His voice was calm, but those who knew him well could hear the tension beneath it. The Kethari lifted his head with tremendous effort. "Earth," he rasped. "The planet in the Sol system. Do not go there. It is a trap. We tried to conquer them. We were the 4th species to try." He coughed, and more blood spilled from his mouth. "None have returned. None." Murmurs spread through the Senate chamber like fire through dry grass. Earth, the primitive world. The planet that had barely discovered faster than light travel. The easy conquest that would give the Empire control of a resource-rich solar system and a strategic position on the galaxy's outer arm. Grand Admiral Vex stepped forward, his military medals catching the light. "This is absurd. Our scouts confirmed that Earth possesses only basic space technology. Their largest ships are smaller than our patrol craft. They have no planetary shields, no orbital defense platforms. They are primitives." "Primitives," the Kethari laughed, and the sound turned into a wet, horrible gurgle. "We thought the same. We sent 800 warships, 800 of our finest vessels with our best crews." He looked up at the Admiral with his dying eyes. "They took us apart in 3 hours. 3 hours, and they did not use weapons we could even understand." Emperor Malthus raised his hand to silence the growing noise in the chamber. "How did you survive to bring us this warning?" "I was not there for the battle. I commanded a supply ship that arrived after." The Kethari's voice was growing weaker with each word. "I saw our fleet. Every ship was intact. Not a scratch on their hulls. But inside," he shuddered. "Inside, there was nothing. No bodies. No crew. Every system was dead. 800 ships turned into empty tombs. And on the planet below, the humans went about their lives as if nothing had happened." The Emperor's chief advisor, a thin woman named Scylla who served as Director of Imperial Intelligence, stepped closer to the throne. "Your Majesty," she said quietly, "the Grand Fleet departed for the Sol system 6 days ago. 3,000 warships. We lost contact with them 12 hours ago." The blood drained from the Emperor's face. The Grand Fleet was the pride of the Valorian Empire. 3,000 warships carrying over 1 million crew members, the largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy's history. He had sent them to claim Earth as a show of strength, a demonstration that would discourage other species from challenging Imperial expansion. "Send a message to Admiral Korath immediately," the Emperor ordered. "We have tried, Your Majesty. Every channel is silent. Not blocked or jammed. Simply silent, as if the fleet no longer exists." On the floor, the Kethari made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "It is already too late. Whatever you sent to Earth, it belongs to them now. Everything that goes to Earth belongs to them. Do you understand? They are not primitives. They never were. Earth is not a planet. It is a trap. And you have walked into it with your greatest treasure." The Emperor stood from his throne. The movement was enough to silence everyone in the chamber. In 10,000 years, few had seen a Valorian emperor stand in the Senate. It simply was not done. The throne was his place, his power, his symbol of absolute authority. To stand was to admit that something had shaken that authority to its core. "Director Scylla, send a scout drone to the Sol system, the fastest we have. I want visual confirmation of the fleet's status within the hour." Scylla bowed and hurried away to carry out the order. The Emperor turned back to the Kethari, but the alien's eyes had gone dark. His body lay still in its pool of blood. The warning had been delivered, and the messenger had paid for it with his last breath. The hour that followed was the longest of Emperor Malthaeus's life. He sat in his private chambers, surrounded by his most trusted advisors, waiting for the drone's report. The silence was heavy. No one dared to speak of what they feared. 3,000 ships, over 1 million soldiers, the finest technology in the galaxy. It could not simply vanish. But Malthaeus had been emperor for 80 years. He had seen empires fall. He had seen impossible things become possible. And something about the Cathari's words had planted a seed of cold dread in his stomach that would not go away. When Director Scylla finally returned, her face told him everything he needed to know before she spoke a word. The drone completed its survey of the Sol system, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she activated the holographic display in the center of the room. The image showed Earth, a blue and green world, beautiful in its simplicity, hanging in the darkness of space. And around it, like dead leaves floating on a still pond, drifted the Grand Fleet. 3,247 vessels confirmed. Scylla continued. All Imperial signatures, all intact. Intact. Admiral Vex stepped forward, studying the image. If they are intact, why have they not responded to our communications? Scylla enlarged the image, focusing on one of the great battleships. The vessel looked perfect. Its hull gleamed in the light of Earth's sun. Its weapons arrays were undamaged. Its engines were still attached and whole, but the ship was dark. No lights in the windows, no energy signatures, no signs of life. They are dead, the Emperor said quietly. Not the ships. The ships are fine, but everything inside them is dead. We cannot confirm casualties at this time, Scylla said carefully. The drone detected no bodies, no debris, no signs of combat. It is as if the crews simply disappeared. Like the Cathari fleet, someone whispered. The Emperor leaned closer to the display. What is that? On the planet's surface, Scylla adjusted the image again, and the room fell into horrified silence. Ships were rising from Earth, hundreds of them. They were small compared to Imperial vessels, simple in design, almost crude-looking. They formed up into neat formations as they left the planet's atmosphere, moving with perfect coordination. They are heading out of the system, Scylla reported. Their trajectory suggests they are heading toward Imperial space. The Emperor closed his eyes. The Cathari's warning echoed in his mind. Earth is a trap, and you have walked into it with your greatest treasure. He had expected many things when he sent the Grand Fleet to conquer Earth. A quick victory, perhaps some minor resistance, a new world added to the Empire's collection, a new species brought under Imperial rule. He had not expected this. He had not expected to feel, for the first time in his long reign, like prey rather than predator. What are your orders, Your Majesty? Admiral Vex asked. The Emperor opened his eyes and looked at the display. The human ships were small and simple, but they moved with a confidence that spoke of absolute certainty. They did not hurry. They did not hesitate. They flew like creatures who had never known fear. We wait, the Emperor said finally. We wait and see what they want. Your Majesty, with respect, we should prepare our defenses. Call up the reserve fleets. Activate the planetary shields. If they could destroy the Grand Fleet, they could. They did not destroy the Grand Fleet, the Emperor interrupted. That is what frightens me, Admiral. They could have destroyed it. Whatever power they possess, they could have turned our ships into dust. Instead, they left them intact. Empty, but intact. He turned to face his advisors. That is not the action of an enemy. That is the action of someone delivering a message. What message? Scylla asked. The Emperor looked back at the display, at the small human ships flying steadily toward his empire. That is what we are about to find out. The ships from Earth continued their journey through the void of space. Behind them, the Grand Fleet drifted in eternal silence around the blue planet, and in the great Senate chamber of the Valorian Empire, the blood of the Cathari messenger slowly dried on the white marble floor, a dark stain that no one dared to clean. The trap had been sprung. Now the galaxy would learn what the hunters had caught, and what the hunters truly wanted. But deep in his heart, Emperor Malthaeus IX already suspected that the trap had never been meant for the Empire at all. Earth had been waiting, watching, testing, and now, whatever test the humans had been conducting, the results were coming. The only question was whether the Valorian Empire would pass or fail. Director Scylla had not slept in 3 days. The archives of Imperial intelligence stretched beneath the capital city like the roots of an ancient tree, and she had walked every corridor, opened every sealed vault, and read every classified document she could find about the planet called Earth. What she discovered kept her awake long after exhaustion should have claimed her. She sat now in her private office, surrounded by holographic displays and ancient data crystals. The information she had gathered painted a picture so terrifying that she almost wished she had never looked. But it was too late for ignorance. The human ships were 4 days away from Imperial space. The Emperor needed answers, and Scylla was the only one who could provide them. She began with the Vorn hierarchy. 300 years ago, the Vorn had been the dominant power in their sector of the galaxy. They were a proud species, warriors who believed that strength was the only law that mattered. When their scouts discovered Earth and reported a primitive species just beginning to explore their own solar system, the Vorn saw an easy conquest. A new slave world, a source of labor and resources. The Vorn invasion force had numbered 5,000 ships. They arrived in Earth's orbit, with weapons charged and demands ready. Surrender or die. It was the same message they had delivered to 100 worlds before. The humans had responded with a single transmission. We do not wish for conflict. Please leave our system in peace. The Vorn commander had laughed at the message. He ordered his troops to land. 6 days later, the Vorn hierarchy received the last transmission from the invasion force. It was a simple message, repeated in every Vorn language and dialect. Your people are safe. They have been returned to your territory. Do not return to Sol. And then, silence. 5,000 ships, 2 million soldiers. Gone. The Vorn sent search parties. They found their soldiers scattered across a dozen Vorn worlds, alive and unharmed but with no memory of how they had gotten there. The ships were never found. The Vorn hierarchy never spoke of the invasion again. Within a generation, all records of Earth had been erased from their public archives, but Imperial intelligence had copies. They always had copies. Scylla moved to the next file. The Thessian Collective. The Thessians were different from the Vorn. They were not warriors but scientists. They valued knowledge above all things. When they learned of Earth, they were curious, a species that had somehow remained uncontacted despite being in a well-traveled region of space. A species that showed no signs of advanced technology but somehow had been avoided by every civilization that discovered them. The Thessians wanted to know why. 180 years ago, they sent a research fleet to study Earth from orbit. They had no intention of conquest. They only wanted to observe, to learn, to understand. But understanding requires patience. And the Thessian commander grew frustrated. The humans refused to respond to communication attempts. They went about their lives on the planet below as if the fleet did not exist. After weeks of silence, the commander made a decision that would doom his entire expedition. He ordered a small demonstration. A single weapon fired at an uninhabited region of the planet. Not to harm anyone, but to force the humans to acknowledge the Thessian presence. The weapon never reached the ground. It vanished in mid-flight, and every system on every Thessian ship went dark at the same moment. Navigation, weapons, communications, life support, everything stopped. The Thessians spent 3 terrifying days trapped in dead ships, watching their air supplies dwindle. And then, just as quietly as they had died, the systems came back online. But the ships were no longer in orbit around Earth. They were drifting in empty space, light years from the Sol system, and there were fewer of them. 12 ships had not made the journey. The commander's vessel was among them. The crew of those 12 ships were found years later, living peaceful lives on a remote Thessian colony world. They had no memory of the fleet, the mission, or the planet called Earth. They had been given new identities, new families, new purposes. They were happy. The Thessians were terrified. They classified all information about Earth at the highest level and forbade any Thessian from ever entering the Sol system again. The collective's official position was that Earth did not exist, but Imperial intelligence had copies. They always had copies. Scylla rubbed her tired eyes and moved to the final file. The Cathari Dominion. This was the most recent incident, only 40 years old. The Cathari had been more careful than their predecessors. They had studied the legends. They had heard the whispered warnings. They knew that something about Earth was wrong. So they tried a different approach. Diplomacy. A Cathari delegation arrived at Earth with gifts and offers of friendship. They spoke of trade, of cultural exchange, of mutual benefit. The humans welcomed them warmly. Treaties were signed. Ambassadors were exchanged. For 5 years, the relationship between the Cathari and the humans seemed to flourish. But the Cathari had never intended friendship. The entire diplomatic mission had been a cover for intelligence gathering, while ambassadors smiled and shook hands. Cathari spies mapped Earth's defenses, studied its technology, and searched for weaknesses. After 5 years, they believed they had found them. Earth's military was small. Its ships were slow. Its weapons were primitive. The friendship had been a trick to buy time. And now the Cathari were ready to strike. The invasion fleet arrived without warning. 800 warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began their assault. The Cathari commander sent a message to Earth explaining that the treaties were void and that humanity was now property of the Dominion. The humans did not respond with words. In 11 minutes, the Cathari flagship was boarded, captured, and its crew subdued. No one saw the boarders arrive. No one heard them move through the corridors. One moment the ship was fully crewed and operational. The next moment, every Cathari on board was unconscious, and the ship was under human control. The rest of the fleet surrendered immediately. What happened next was what truly haunted Scylla as she reviewed the records. The humans had every right to be angry. They had offered friendship, and the Cathari had responded with betrayal. Any other species would have demanded blood. Instead, the humans gathered all the Cathari prisoners and delivered a single message. We knew about your plans from the beginning. We allowed the deception to continue because we hoped you would change your minds. You did not, but we will not punish you for your nature. You are free to leave. Do not return, and they let them go. 800 ships of enemies, released without harm. Scylla leaned back in her chair, her mind struggling to process what she had learned. 3 invasions spanning 3 centuries, 3 species with different cultures, different motivations, different approaches, and every time, the same result. Humanity won without losing a single life. On either side, they defeated armies without fighting battles. They broke fleets without firing weapons, and every time, they offered peace afterward. It made no sense. No species in galactic history had ever possessed such power and used it with such restraint. Conquest was the natural order. The strong took from the weak. That was how empires were built, how civilizations rose and fell. But the humans did not conquer. They defended. They warned. They released. Why? Scylla pulled up the galactic surveys of Earth once more. The planet appeared in every database as a primitive world, barely worthy of notice. Low population, limited technology, no military threat. It was the kind of world that empires conquered without thinking, added to their territory like collecting spare change. But the data was wrong. It had always been wrong. And suddenly, Scylla understood why. The humans wanted to be underestimated. They wanted to be ignored. They had deliberately crafted an image of weakness and primitiveness because they wanted species to leave them alone. And when someone refused to leave them alone, when someone forced their hand, the humans revealed just enough of their true power to end the threat. Then they hid again, waiting for the next test. Earth was not a trap for conquerors. Earth was a test, and every species that had attacked it had failed that test, revealing themselves as threats rather than potential friends. But what were the humans testing for? What were they looking for? Scylla's communicator buzzed. She checked the message and felt her blood run cold. The human ships had changed course. They were no longer heading toward the main Imperial systems. They were heading directly toward the capital world. They would arrive in 36 hours. Scylla gathered her research and hurried toward the Imperial Palace. The Emperor needed to know what she had discovered. He needed to understand that the humans were not coming for revenge or conquest. They were coming to see if the Valorian Empire could pass the test that so many others had failed. And if the Cathari's dying warning was any indication, failure was not an option. Because somewhere out there, something terrible was coming. Something that had driven humanity to become what they were. Something that made even the most powerful species in the galaxy hide behind masks of weakness. The humans were not the trap. They were the bait. And whatever they were trying to catch, it was far worse than anything the galaxy had ever imagined. The human ship entered Imperial space on a quiet morning, when the twin suns of Valoria Prime were just beginning to rise over the capital city. It was a small vessel, barely larger than a diplomatic shuttle, with smooth curves and a simple design that looked almost primitive compared to the massive warships that surrounded it. 200 Imperial vessels had formed a defensive perimeter around the capital world. Their weapons were charged and ready. Their crews were tense with fear and anticipation. Every sensor was focused on the single human ship that drifted slowly toward the planet. Emperor Malthius stood in the command center of the orbital defense platform, watching the holographic display that tracked the alien vessel's approach. Director Scylla stood beside him, her report fresh in his mind. Admiral Vex paced behind them, his hand never far from his sidearm. "They have made no aggressive moves," Scylla observed. "They are broadcasting a continuous signal of peaceful intent on all frequencies." "A trick," Admiral Vex muttered. "Like the Kethari. They will smile and offer friendship until they are ready to strike." "The Kethari were the ones who offered false friendship," Scylla corrected him. "The humans responded to betrayal with mercy. That is not the behavior of deceivers." "Then what do they want?" the Admiral demanded. "They captured our Grand Fleet. They hold 1 million of our soldiers prisoner. If not conquest, what is their purpose?" The Emperor raised his hand for silence. On the display, the human ship had stopped. It hung motionless in space, surrounded by the defensive fleet, making no attempt to advance further. "They are waiting," Malthius said softly. "They are waiting for us to decide." A communication signal flashed on the display. The humans were requesting permission to speak. The Emperor nodded to the communications officer. "Let them speak." The holographic display shifted, and a human face appeared. It was a woman, middle-aged by human standards, with dark hair touched by gray and calm eyes that seemed to look directly into the Emperor's soul. She wore simple clothing, nothing that suggested military rank or political power. "Emperor Malthius IX," she said, and her voice was warm, almost gentle. "My name is Ambassador Chen. I come on behalf of Earth and all of humanity to request a meeting. We have much to discuss." Admiral Vex stepped forward. "You hold our fleet hostage. You have captured over 1 million Imperial citizens. And you wish to discuss?" Ambassador Chen's expression did not change. "Your soldiers are safe, Admiral. They are being well cared for. None have been harmed, and none will be harmed. We did not ask for this conflict. Your fleet entered our system with hostile intent. We responded with the minimum force necessary to protect ourselves." "Minimum force?" The Admiral's voice rose with anger. "You disabled 3,000 warships. We disabled their systems," Chen agreed. "We did not destroy them. We did not kill their crews. Admiral, if we wanted your empire destroyed, we could have done so already. We do not want destruction. We want understanding." Emperor Malthius stepped forward, and his movement silenced the Admiral. "You may land, Ambassador Chen. I will hear what you have to say." The human ship descended through the atmosphere and landed in the Imperial courtyard, a vast open space surrounded by the ancient towers of the palace. The Emperor waited at the base of the grand stairs, flanked by his guards and advisors. The morning light cast long shadows across the stone. The ship's door opened, and 3 humans emerged. Ambassador Chen led the way, her steps measured and calm. Behind her walked a tall man with dark skin and a face marked by old scars, wearing a simple uniform that suggested military service. The third was a younger woman with quick, curious eyes, carrying a small device in her hands. They approached the Emperor and stopped at a respectful distance. Chen bowed her head slightly in a gesture of courtesy. "Emperor Malthius, thank you for receiving us." The Emperor studied the 3 humans carefully. They did not look like conquerors. They did not carry weapons. They showed no fear despite being surrounded by armed guards who could cut them down in an instant. "You requested this meeting," Malthius said. "Speak your purpose." Chen gestured to the scarred man beside her. "This is Commander Okafor. He oversaw the incident with your fleet. And this is Dr. Vasquez. She will help explain why we have come." Commander Okafor reached into his uniform and pulled out a small data crystal. He held it up for the Emperor to see. "This contains the personal identification codes of every crew member from your Grand Fleet. 1,200,472 individuals. All alive, all unharmed, all being held in comfortable quarters on Earth. A murmur ran through the Imperial Guards. Over 1 million prisoners, and the humans spoke of them as guests rather than captives. We did not want to take them, Okafor continued. His voice was deep and steady, the voice of a soldier who had seen many battles. When your fleet arrived, we sent warnings. We asked them to leave. Admiral Korath refused. He ordered his ships to attack. The commander shook his head slowly. We gave him every chance to make a different choice. And when he did not, the Emperor asked, we ended the threat without ending lives. Every member of your fleet is alive because we chose to make it so. Killing is easy, Emperor. Preserving life while defending your home is much harder. Ambassador Chen stepped forward again. Your Majesty, we have not come to negotiate the release of your soldiers. They will be returned to you regardless of how this meeting ends. We have not come to demand tribute or territory. We want nothing from your empire. Then why have you come? Chen exchanged a glance with Dr. Vasquez, who stepped forward and activated the device in her hands. A holographic display flickered to life between the humans and the Emperor, showing an image of Earth floating in space. We have come to tell you the truth, Chen said. The truth about Earth, the truth about humanity, and the truth about why we have hidden ourselves from the galaxy for so long. The Emperor felt a chill run down his spine. Director Silla's report had prepared him for many things, but the weight in Chen's voice suggested something even darker than he had imagined. 12,000 years ago, Dr. Vasquez began, her voice taking on the measured tone of a scholar. Humanity was not alone on Earth. We shared our world with many species of animals, lived simple lives in small communities, and knew nothing of the stars. The holographic display shifted, showing ancient Earth, green and blue and beautiful. And then they came. The image changed. Dark shapes descended from the sky, massive vessels that blotted out the sun. The holographic Earth trembled as the invasion began. We call them the Devourers, Vasquez continued. They were ancient when the oldest stars in this galaxy were young. They travel between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. Entire civilizations, entire species. They leave nothing behind. No records, no survivors, no evidence they were ever there. The Emperor leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the display. I have never heard of such a species. No one has. That is the point. The Devourers do not just destroy, they erase. Every species they consume, every world they strip, every civilization they end. All evidence of those things is removed from the galaxy, as if they never existed. Commander Okafor spoke again. When they came to Earth, humanity numbered in the billions. Within a year, we were reduced to thousands, scattered tribes hiding in caves, fighting for survival against enemies we could not understand. His scarred face hardened with old pain. We should have been erased like all the others. But you were not, the Emperor said. How? Ambassador Chen smiled, but there was no joy in it. Because humans do not know how to surrender. We adapt, we learn, we survive. It took us generations, but we studied the Devourers. We stole their technology. We learned their secrets. And when we were finally strong enough, we drove them from our world. Dr. Vasquez changed the display again. It showed humanity rebuilding, advancing, reaching for the stars. We could have joined the galactic community then. We had the technology. We had the knowledge. But we also had a terrible understanding. She paused, and her eyes met the Emperor's. The Devourers are still out there. They move slowly, taking centuries to cross the void between galaxies. But they always return to finish what they started. They are coming back? Malthius asked. Yes. Our sensors detected their scout probes entering this galaxy 40 years ago. Their main fleet will arrive within 50 years. And when they come, they will consume everything. Every species, every civilization, every world, unless someone stops them. The Emperor sat in silence, processing the enormity of what he had heard. A galaxy-consuming threat, an enemy that erased all evidence of its existence, and humanity, hiding behind masks of weakness, preparing for a war that no other species even knew was coming. Why tell me this? He finally asked. Why reveal yourselves now? Ambassador Chen stepped forward, and her eyes were bright with something that looked almost like hope. Because we cannot fight them alone. We are strong, Emperor. Stronger than you know. But the Devourers have destroyed civilizations that spanned entire galaxies. No single species can stand against them. We need allies. We need friends. And we have spent centuries looking for species worthy of that trust. The invasions, Malthus whispered, understanding dawning. The Vorn, the Thessians, the Cathari, my grand fleet. You were testing us. We were evaluating you, Chen corrected gently. Every species that comes to Earth with hostile intent shows us who they truly are, how they fight, how they treat the defeated, whether they can learn from their mistakes. She paused. Your Admiral Korath refused to retreat, but your soldiers surrendered, with honor when they understood they were beaten. Your empire sent a dying refugee to us for judgment, rather than kill him for bringing bad news. And you, Emperor, chose to listen before attacking. Commander Okafor stepped forward and dropped to one knee before the Emperor. It was a gesture of respect that no human had ever offered to a Valorian ruler. Will you stand with us? He asked. Will you help us protect the galaxy from the darkness that is coming? Or will you stand alone? When the Devourers arrive, the Emperor looked at the three humans before him, enemies who had become messengers, conquerors who sought only allies, warriors who had chosen mercy over destruction at every turn. The choice, he realized, had never really been his to make. History had made it for him the moment his fleet entered Earth's orbit and learned that some traps were not meant to catch prey. They were meant to catch friends. The Imperial throne room had witnessed 10,000 years of history. Treaties had been signed within its walls. Wars had been declared from its podium. Emperors had risen and fallen beneath its vaulted ceilings. But nothing in all those centuries had prepared it for what happened on this day. Emperor Malthus sat on his throne, surrounded by every senator, every noble, every military commander in the empire. The great chamber was packed to capacity. Thousands of the most powerful beings in Valorian society gathered to hear the truth about humanity and the threat that was coming for them all. Ambassador Chen stood at the center of the room, her small figure dwarfed by the massive architecture around her, but her voice carried to every corner of the chamber, clear and steady, and impossible to ignore. What I am about to show you will be difficult to believe, she said. It will challenge everything you think you know about the galaxy and your place in it. But I ask you to watch with open minds and open hearts. The fate of every living thing depends on what we do next. Dr. Vasquez activated the holographic display, and the throne room transformed into a window onto ancient history. The galaxy appeared before them, but it was not the galaxy they knew. Stars that were now dark burned bright. Regions that were now empty teemed with life. Civilizations spanned entire sectors, their ships and stations and worlds forming networks of light against the darkness. This is what the galaxy looked like 12,000 years ago, Vasquez explained. Before the Devourers' last great harvest, 17 major civilizations, over 1 trillion sentient beings, art, science, philosophy, culture, all of it flourishing across countless worlds. The image shifted, and a shadow appeared at the galaxy's edge. It was not a single shape, but millions of them, a swarm of darkness that blocked out the stars behind it. The Devourers arrived from the void between galaxies. They had consumed everything in their previous home and came here looking for more. The shadow moved forward, and everywhere it touched, the lights went out. Stars dimmed. Civilizations vanished. The great networks of life and culture and knowledge collapsed into nothing, one by one, until the galaxy was dark and empty. Gasps and murmurs filled the throne room. The senators watched in horror as billions of years of evolution and progress were erased in what seemed like moments. This is not a story, Chen said quietly. This is history. History that has been erased so thoroughly that no species alive today remembers it. The Devourers do not just destroy. They consume everything. Bodies, buildings, ships, records, even the light that carries images of what once existed. They leave nothing behind. How do you know this? Admiral Vex demanded. If they erase all evidence, how can you possibly know what happened? Commander Okafor stepped forward. Because they made a mistake. When they came to Earth, they assumed we would be easy prey, primitive creatures barely aware of our own world. They did not realize that humans are different from other species. The display changed to show ancient Earth. Small groups of humans huddled in caves, watching the dark shapes descend from the sky. We were nearly exterminated, Okafor continued. The Devourers killed billions of us. They harvested our cities, our technology, our history. They thought they had finished us. His voice hardened with pride. They were wrong. The image showed humans emerging from hiding places, building weapons from Devourer technology they had scavenged, fighting back with tools and tactics the enemy had never encountered. Humans evolved on a world that was trying to kill us from the moment we first drew breath. Predators, diseases, disasters, harsh climates, scarce resources. We learned to adapt to anything. We learned to fight enemies bigger and stronger than ourselves. And we learned to never, ever give up. The display showed something remarkable. Humans capturing a Devourer ship, reverse engineering its systems, building new vessels that combined human determination with alien technology. It took us 5,000 years, Chen said. 5,000 years of hiding, learning, building, waiting. And then we struck back. We drove the Devourers from our world and pushed them out of our solar system. We captured their vessels, studied their records, and learned the truth about what they had done to the galaxy. She paused, and her eyes swept across the assembled senators. The 17 civilizations that existed before the Devourers came. They were not simply destroyed. They were erased from existence so completely that even the empty space where their worlds had been shows no evidence they were ever there. The galaxy, you know, the galaxy you have mapped and explored and claimed as your own, is a graveyard. You are living among the ashes of trillions of souls, and you never even knew it. The throne room was silent. The weight of what Chen had revealed pressed down on everyone present like a physical force. Emperor Malthius finally spoke. You said the Devourers are returning. How do you know? Dr. Vasquez manipulated the display, and it showed a map of the galaxy with several points highlighted in red. These are locations where we have detected Devourer scout probes over the past 40 years. They are mapping the galaxy again, cataloging species, assessing threats. The main fleet is still in the void between galaxies, but it is moving toward us. She highlighted a trajectory line that ended at the galaxy's heart. Based on their speed and direction, they will arrive in approximately 50 years. 50 years, Malthius repeated. That is not much time. No, Chen agreed. It is not, but it is enough time to prepare, enough time to build a defense, enough time to do what no species has ever done before and stop the Devourers from claiming another galaxy. Admiral Vex stepped forward, his skepticism evident on his face. You claim to have driven them from your world. If you are so powerful, why do you need us? Why not face them alone? Because we have seen their full strength. Okafor replied. The force that came to Earth was a small harvesting fleet, distracted and weakened from consuming the rest of the galaxy. The main swarm is billions of vessels strong. Even with all our power, we cannot defeat them alone. He turned to address the entire chamber. Every species that attacked Earth was evaluated, not as enemies to be destroyed, but as potential allies to be tested. We needed to know if you could fight, if you could learn, if you could put aside your pride and your anger and work together against a common threat. And have we passed your test? The Emperor asked. Chen smiled, and for the first time, there was genuine warmth in it. The Vorn hierarchy failed. They could not accept defeat gracefully. They erased all memory of Earth from their records and retreated into isolation. When the Devourers come, they will be consumed alone. She turned to look at the Emperor directly. The Thessians came close to passing. They were curious and careful, but when we released them, they chose fear over courage. They hid from the truth instead of facing it. And the Kethari? Admiral Vex asked. The Kethari betrayed our friendship, but some of them learned from that mistake. Some of them chose a different path. Chen gestured to the side of the room, and a door opened. A group of Kethari walked into the throne room. They wore no weapons, carried no banners. They moved with the humble bearing of those who had faced death and chosen a different life. These are survivors of the Kethari invasion fleet, Chen explained. After we released them, they did not forget what happened. They did not hide from the truth. They came to us and asked how they could help. They have been our allies for 40 years, working alongside humanity to prepare for what is coming. The Kethari leader stepped forward and bowed to the Emperor. The humans showed us mercy when we deserved punishment. They taught us that strength is not measured by how many enemies you can destroy, but by how many friends you can make. He raised his head and met the Emperor's eyes. The Devourers consumed my species' homeworld 12,000 years ago. We have no memory of it, no records, no proof it ever existed. But we know it was real because the humans showed us, and we have sworn to help them ensure that no other species suffers the same fate. Emperor Malthus stood from his throne. It was the second time he had risen in the Senate chamber in less than a week, something that had not happened in centuries. But the moment demanded it. You are asking us to join a war against an enemy we have never seen. An enemy we have no evidence exists beyond your word. An enemy so powerful that it consumed entire galaxies. Yes, Chen said simply. And if we refuse, then you are free to go. We will return your fleet and your soldiers. We will leave your space and never return. You can spend your remaining years in peace, building your empire, living your lives. She paused. And then the Devourers will come. They will consume your worlds and your people and your history. They will erase every trace of the Valorian Empire from existence. And no one will ever know you were here. The throne room erupted in arguments. Senators shouted at each other. Military commanders debated strategy. Nobles questioned whether the humans could be trusted, but Emperor Malthus did not hear any of it. He was looking at the Kethari, who had once been enemies and were now allies. He was thinking about the million soldiers still held on Earth, alive and safe when any other species would have killed them. He was remembering the Kethari messenger who had crawled across the galaxy to deliver a warning that could have saved countless lives. The humans had every reason to hate the species that attacked them. They had every opportunity to destroy their enemies. Instead, they had shown mercy. They had offered friendship. They had spent centuries searching for beings worthy of standing beside them against the darkness. And now they were offering the Valorian Empire that same chance. I have made my decision, the Emperor announced. And his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The throne room fell silent. Every eye turned to the ancient ruler standing before his throne. The Valorian Empire will stand with humanity. We will join this alliance. We will help prepare for the Devourers. And when they come, we will fight beside our new friends until the enemy is defeated or we are no more. Ambassador Chen bowed her head in respect. Thank you, Your Majesty. You will not regret this choice. I know, Malthus said, because I understand now why you tested us. You were not looking for the strongest species or the most advanced technology. You were looking for species who could learn, who could grow, who could become something better than they were. He stepped down from his throne and walked toward the human ambassador until they stood face to face. Earth was never a trap for conquerors. It was a test for potential friends, and we intend to prove that we deserve to pass. Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. The Emperor took it, and in that moment, the galaxy began to change. 1 year had passed since the Emperor's declaration, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have imagined. The Grand Fleet had returned home 3 days after the alliance was formed. 1 million soldiers emerged from human transports, healthy and rested, carrying stories that spread across the Empire like wildfire. They spoke of their captivity with wonder, rather than shame. The humans had treated them as guests rather than prisoners. They had shared meals together, learned each other's languages, played games and told stories, and discovered that enemies could become friends. Admiral Korath himself had been among the last to leave Earth, the proud commander who had refused to retreat, who had ordered his fleet to attack despite every warning, had emerged from his time among humans as a changed man. He stood before the Imperial Senate and described how human soldiers had visited him every day, not to interrogate or threaten, but to talk, to understand, to help him see that strength and compassion were not opposites but partners. I was prepared to die fighting them, he told the assembled senators. Instead, they taught me that the greatest victory is turning an enemy into a friend. The news spread beyond the Empire. The Kethari survivors who had accompanied Ambassador Chen became messengers, traveling to every corner of the galaxy with the truth about Earth, about humanity, and about the coming darkness. Some species refused to listen. They hid behind their borders and pretended that the threat was not real. But others came forward, willing to hear more, willing to learn. The Thessian collective emerged from their self-imposed exile. Their leaders approached humanity with fear and hope in equal measure, confessing that they had hidden from the truth for nearly 2 centuries. The humans welcomed them without judgment and shared everything they had learned about the Devourers. Even some of the Vorn hierarchy broke with their government's policy of denial. Young Vorn warriors who had heard the legends of Earth sought out human ships and asked to join the alliance. They were accepted, and their presence became proof that any species could change if they were willing to try. The alliance grew. Week by week, month by month, new species joined the coalition. Small civilizations that had never dared to stand against larger powers found their voices. Ancient species that had thought themselves alone discovered kindred spirits among the stars. Enemies who had fought each other for generations laid down their weapons and picked up tools, working together to build the fleet that would defend the galaxy. And at the center of it all stood humanity. They shared their technology freely, holding nothing back. They opened their archives and revealed everything they had learned about the Devourers during 5,000 years of preparation. They trained soldiers from 100 different species, teaching them tactics that had been refined across millennia of hidden war. But more than technology or tactics, the humans shared something else, something that no species had ever offered before: hope. The gathering took place at the edge of the galaxy, where the void between the stars stretched toward the darkness beyond. Ships from every member of the Alliance had assembled here, the largest fleet in the history of sentient life. Thousands of vessels from hundreds of species, floating in formation like a wall of light against the coming night. Commander Okafor stood on the bridge of the human flagship, surrounded by officers from a dozen different worlds. A year ago, most of them had been enemies or strangers. Now they worked together with the ease of lifelong comrades. A Valorian lieutenant monitored the sensor array. A Cathari communications officer coordinated with the other ships. A Thessian navigator calculated the fleet's optimal formation. And a young Vorn warrior, one of the first to break with his species' isolation, stood at the weapons console with fierce pride in his eyes. The Devourers are still 49 years away, the Thessian reported. Why are we gathering now? Okafor smiled. Because preparation is not just about building weapons and training soldiers. It is about building trust. Every species here needs to know that when the darkness comes, the ships beside them will not run. They need to know that they are not alone. The Vorn warrior looked up from his console. My ancestors ran from the humans 300 years ago. They chose fear over courage and lost everything as a result. I will not make their mistake. None of us will, the Cathari officer agreed. The humans gave us a second chance when we deserved none. We will stand with them until the end. Okafor nodded, but his eyes were distant, looking at something beyond the viewport. The end may be sooner than you think. The Devourers are clever. They have seen alliances before. They will not wait patiently for us to become stronger. They will send advance forces to test our defenses, to find our weaknesses, to break our unity before the main fleet arrives. Let them come, the Valorian lieutenant said. We will show them that this galaxy is no longer easy prey. A communication signal chimed, and Ambassador Chen's face appeared on the main display. She was aboard a diplomatic vessel several hundred kilometers away, coordinating with species leaders who had come to witness the gathering. Commander, the final delegation has arrived. The council is ready to convene. Understood. We are on our way. The council met on a station that had been built specifically for this purpose, a neutral ground where any species could feel welcome. Its corridors were filled with beings of every shape and size, speaking in dozens of languages that were translated instantly by devices the humans had provided. The council chamber itself was enormous, with seats arranged in a great circle so that no species sat higher than any other. Hundreds of representatives had gathered, from the mightiest empires to the smallest independent worlds. Emperor Maltheus sat among them, no more prominent than the elected leader of a single planet civilization. Ambassador Chen took her place at the center of the circle. She looked older than she had a year ago, worn by the weight of endless negotiations and constant travel, but her eyes were still bright, still filled with the determination that had guided humanity through 12,000 years of preparation. Friends, she began, and the word carried a weight that it had never held before. We have gathered here to celebrate what we have accomplished and to prepare for what lies ahead. 1 year ago, most of you had never heard of Earth. Many of you were enemies of each other, locked in conflicts that seemed eternal. Today, we stand together as allies in the greatest cause the galaxy has ever known. She paused, letting her words settle into the hearts of everyone present. The Devourers are coming. That truth has not changed. But what has changed is our response to that truth. We are no longer isolated species, fighting for survival alone. We are a community, a family, and families protect each other. Commander Okafor stepped forward to stand beside the ambassador. Our scouts report that the Devourers have accelerated their approach. Their advance forces will reach the galaxy's edge within 5 years. The main fleet will follow 20 years after that. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber, but no one fled. No one demanded to withdraw from the alliance. They had come too far to turn back now. We have time, Okafor continued. Time to build more ships, time to train more soldiers, time to develop new strategies, and time to grow stronger together. He looked around at the assembled representatives, meeting every eye that would hold his gaze. The Devourers have never faced a united galaxy. They have never encountered species who chose to stand together rather than fall alone. They are coming to find easy prey. He smiled, and in that smile was all the fierce pride of a species that had refused to die. They are going to be disappointed. The fleet departed the gathering point in waves, each group returning to their home systems to continue preparations. But before they left, they performed one final act together. Every ship in the fleet activated its external lights, creating a display of color and brilliance that could be seen from light years away. It was a signal, a beacon, a promise cast into the void toward the darkness that was approaching. We are here. We are ready. Come and face us if you dare. On the bridge of the human flagship, Commander Okafor watched the light show with quiet satisfaction. The Valorian lieutenant stood beside him, young and eager but tempered by a year of training and cooperation. Do you think we can win? The lieutenant asked. Okafor considered the question for a long moment. I think we have a chance. A real chance. Not because we are stronger than the Devourers, but because we have something they have never faced. What is that? Each other. The commander turned to look at his crew, the collection of former enemies who had become trusted friends. The Devourers destroy civilizations one at a time, isolating them, dividing them, breaking them apart before they can unite. They have done it successfully for longer than this galaxy has existed. He turned back to the viewport, where the lights of the Allied fleet were beginning to fade as ships jumped to their destinations. But they have never faced a galaxy that was already united. They have never encountered species who knew they were coming and chose to stand together anyway. That is what Earth was really testing for all those years. Not whether species could be defeated, but whether they could learn, whether they could grow, whether they could become something greater than they were alone. The lieutenant was quiet for a moment. The humans spent 12,000 years preparing for this, hiding, waiting, testing. That is patience beyond anything I can imagine. It is not patience, Okafor said softly. It is hope. We hoped that someday we would find friends worthy of fighting beside, friends who would stand with us when the darkness came. He smiled at the young Valorian. And we found them. That is worth any amount of waiting. The flagship jumped to hyperspace, following the fleet home. Behind them, the gathering point fell silent once more, just empty space at the edge of the galaxy. But it would not be empty for long. In 5 years, the advance forces of the Devourers would arrive, expecting easy prey. They would find something very different. They would find a galaxy that had learned to stand together. They would find species who had turned enemies into friends. They would find humanity, finally emerging from 12,000 years of shadow, ready to lead the greatest battle the universe had ever seen. Earth had never been a trap. It had been a test, and the galaxy had passed.